Hola a todos. Welcome everyone back to Seville in Spain. I'm standing right beside the Guadalquivir River in Seville, Spain. It's very pretty. It's very exciting because one of the reasons why I chose Seville, aside from its beauty, is its part in history, right? I'm a bit of a history nerd, you know. It's weird saying like history fan. That seems weird. But I like history. I like the stories. I like looking at it. And over the last few years on these adventures that I'm taking, the idea that I can come and see these places that I've read about all those years is just, it's so amazing. It's such a cool thing to do. And the way I normally describe it is that it's like meeting a celebrity, right? Like it's really like you get a little starstruck and, you know, you're like, oh, that's that, and that's that, you know. And I would imagine that's very similar to like, oh, that's the guy from, you know, and oh, that's the actress that played the, you know, or just, you know, some famous person anyway. But that's what it feels like. And it really, you know, you get excited and you come into town. Like, for example, this thing that I'm trying to point at right here is the Torre d'Oro, the Golden Tower. It's situated on the river here. I'm actually right beside a fake galley, which is very apropos for Seville, because Spain, right, in its golden years was this, you know, exploration hub. And, you know, for good or bad, this is where it all happened. This is where it all began. A little weird man kept harassing the king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, claiming that he, you know, he knew a better way, and he was going to, you know, go to India, and he wound up finding, you know, where I live now, North America. Although he didn't, you know, technically, I'm going to generalize from this point further. He never stepped foot on the Americas or whatever, but, you know, and also too, we all know at this point that the whole, everybody thought the earth was flat thing was silly. And I mean, you know, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Persians, they all knew that that was wrong. And a sailor certainly would not think that the world was flat. So anyway, he managed to talk them into this big venture. And what in fact really happened was people thought that the distance between Europe and going all the way to India, you know, was just too far with the technology. They couldn't keep enough food on a ship. They couldn't navigate properly for that long a distance, right? That was the challenge. But he Christopher Columbus, he suggested that the earth wasn't flat. He actually suggested that the earth was like pear-shaped. And if he went on a certain angle, he wouldn't have to actually travel that far. You know, we build a lot of statues for that guy because, you know, he discovered things, but whew. Anyway, this is where it happened, right? This is Europe's or Spain's only navigable river at the moment, but this is where they came. So the ships would come up the river from, you know, the Atlantic Ocean and come to Seville and drop their goods off. Just down there, of course, is the palace that Isabella and Ferdinand would have, you know, received, you know, word from the New World and all that. And this is the first place where things like potatoes and tomatoes and all those good things came to Europe, right here, like right here, you know. And what's interesting, and just to close that point, right, like they could get this far up the river, and that would be a lot easier than, you know, a horse and buggy, right, the rest of it. And so, yeah, this is it. And for good or bad, I mean, you know, it's called the Columbian exchange because it was an exchange, but it wasn't exactly a fair exchange, historically speaking, right? And, you know, there's a lot of generalities you could talk about that. There's a lot of weird parts of history, and you know, that's what history is all about too, is you got to take the good and the bad, you know, just kind of, I was going to say not make a judgment, but that's not true. You have to make a judgment. What you need to do is understand it, acknowledge it, and then more importantly, learn ways not to do it again. You know, that's the lessons we have from history. But, you know, they happened, and they happened the way they did. But getting away from the you know, criminal element of all that stuff, it is still pretty fascinated about the exploration and the ships and the galleys and the fact that at the time, what's really fascinating is Spain at the time had already just spent a couple decades or so reconquering their land. It was 1492 that Spain was officially taken back, you know, as they say. Although that's another one of those things, right? History, right? But it was a brand new country. In fact, for a long time, it still wouldn't even be Spain. It would still be the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon, right? It was Ferdinand and Isabella that, you know, ruled those two nations, and when they married, they were joined. But it still wasn't even considered Spain for a good long while, right? It took a long time. And then they, of course, you know, did a whole bunch of conquering on the other side of the planet, but also took over through family connections, like a big chunk of Europe, the south of Italy, Sicily. Like, it's, you know, it's quite fascinating. They went from like nothing to this huge empire. And it all started right here. So it's fascinating. So yeah, when I say it's kind of like meeting a celebrity, it's like, yeah, these are probably not the exact same steps that those original sailors would have come with these brand new discoveries, and, you know, tobacco and tomatoes and potatoes and, of course, silver and gold. But down the street too is, which I plan to go visit as well, it's still called the Tobacco Factory. And it's this big, huge building with a moat around it. It's dry now, but it's, yeah, like, it's all here. It's all here. This is it, you know. And I'm going to explore a lot more. Today, I managed to get out during the day, and just I just love seeing the buildings, you know. And as someone who, you know, as many of you know, I went off to Palermo in Sicily last year, and then visited the south of Italy. And there's an aesthetic. There's a Spanish aesthetic that you can really see. Obviously, if you've ever been to like Mexico or Cuba, it's also really, really strong there. But you could see the mix when you deal with Sicily. It's such a mix of an aesthetic, right? Like, everybody has the domes, the shapes are very similar. In fact, someone just wrote a comment thinking I was back in Palermo because of the big dome by my Airbnb, which is, you know, super fascinating. But at the same time, Spain tends to be a little bit more, there's a little bit more color. A lot of yellows and blues, which is really interesting to see, especially around the pottery. But of course, if you've seen White Lotus, that series, I'd recommend. It was good. Second season was in Sicily, and they focused on the pottery and those heads, and you saw the colors, the blues, the bright yellows. And of course, Sicily has a little bit more color into it, and here in Spain, you know, it's very, very distinct with those blues and yellows, and it's just so cool. It's like seeing the evolution of that aesthetic, and in real time almost. Well, not really real time, but the result of real-time evolution. So anyway, I'm babbling. Like you could tell, I'm very excited to be here, and it's really, really cool. And I love just, you know, the character. You know, every one of these buildings, you know, looks like something, like somebody put a lot of effort into making it look like that, and takes a lot of pride. And yeah, so I'm going to wander around the river now and just think about a little bit more about where I am and all the cool things that I'm going to see while I'm here, because I'm very excited. And I hope everyone out there is doing great. I'm doing awesome. If you're watching me on YouTube, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I would absolutely love that. It really helps with the algorithm and that, you know, and allows other people to see it. It'd be cool to share with as many people as possible these little adventures. So, or, you know, just like the video if you like it. Dislikes fine too. Or, you know, tell me the city that you'd be most excited to live at. Like which city would you act like you just met a celebrity? Because I gotta say, there's a lot of them for me. Anyway, with that, I will say adios and hasta mañana. We'll chat tomorrow.